Good morning, all. Author Brian S. Pratt here again. I'm going to read chapter 21 today of the Unsuspecting Mage, book 1 of the Morcyth Saga, with commentary. Quick recap. Michael and James have reached trade meet. Now they're heading through the Merchant's Pass on their way over into the neighboring kingdom of Matic. There they're going to go towards the Sea of Gods and see if they can find where the High Temple of the Morcyth used to be. And hopefully they'll be able to find more information out about this medallion on their chest. We're starting to get to the good stuff. All right, I'll be doing some editing as I go along. And let's do it. The road through the pass was the main artery for trade between Matic and Cardry, and wide enough to accommodate 3 wagons abreast. The surface of the road, while not perfectly smooth, was firm and level with minimal ruts and potholes. As they left the entrance to the pass and followed the road around the bend, the panoramic view of the gorge unfolded. They paused to take in its grandeur. On either side, the gorge rose up to dizzying heights with the river cutting through the middle. Cascading down the opposite side, several waterfalls added additional splendor. The road followed the river for nearly a mile before it began its ascent to the upper elevations. With many a twist and turn, it occasionally vanished from view, only to reappear once more not further, I have further, but I'm changing to farther. Because farther is distance, further is like furthering a plan or something. Up the mountainside. Straining their vision, they could barely make out where the road ultimately disappeared into the clouds. "We're going there?" James heard Michael exclaim incredulously. "It's not so bad," he assured his friend. "Caravans come this way all the time, so I'm sure we will have little difficulty." Nudging his horse forward, James continued down the road, forcing Michael to keep up or be left behind. Before the road began its ascent from the river, they came upon a fellow traveler driving a wagon loaded with goods. "Excuse me," James said as he came abreast of the wagon. The man turned his head towards the pair. "Yes?" "How far is it to the other side of the pass?" 2 days on horseback," the man said. "Most caravans make it in about 4 to 5, depending on the load they're carrying." "Is there any place along the way to stop and eat?" Michael asked. "No, son, there isn't," he replied. "However, there is a way stop near the top where travelers are able to rest for the night before making the descent on the other side." "Appreciate the information," James said. "You're welcome." James nudged his horse, and they resumed their quick pace, leaving the man and his wagon behind. "Are we going to spend the tonight at the way stop?" "I would think so. If we make it that far before it gets dark, that is." Once the ascent began, the road climbed at a steady, though at the moment not an overly steep pace. It ran along the right side of the river, following the water's path as it flowed through the gorge. At times, the river roared to life when it made its way through an area of rapids. As they progressed deeper and deeper into the pass, the mountainside to the right of the road became increasingly steep as its vertical slope increased. Waterfalls grew plentiful as the warm summer weather melted the snowpack in the upper elevations. This area here, I would think the inspiration for this would be Washington State, Highway 20, north, you follow it past New Halem. And that's a beautiful gorge area there. Me and my kids go through there. There's the Ross Dam, Ross Lake, and it goes through Washington's Pass on its way over to Winthrop. They have a big rodeo there every year. And in the summertime, the waterfalls are plentiful. There's this one gorge, or there's one bridge. It's graded, so you can walk out on it and look straight down, like 300 feet straight down. And off to the left, there's a triple waterfall where it works its way down the mountainside, under the bridge, and over to Ross Lake. Beautiful area. Now, if you go there in the wintertime, they will close that road in the wintertime at milepost 33. But before you get there, you go there like January, February, all the waterfalls are frozen. So you have these cascades of ice, big sheets of ice coming down on the side of the road. Oh, beautiful area. I absolutely love going there. And me and the kids have been there many, many, many times. We've hiked around there, and it's one of our favorite areas. Being a city boy, Michael had never seen waterfalls and was quite impressed by their beauty and power. He paused by one as he dismounted to fill his depleted water bottle. When he placed the bottle in the waterfall, he quickly snatched his hand back when the water hit his skin. "What's the matter?" James asked, startled at his reaction. Michael looked at James. "It is cold." Laughing, James explained, "Of course it's cold. The water's coming from snow melting high up in the peaks." "Oh," he replied, feeling slightly embarrassed not to have known that. He gritted his teeth and placed his bottle back in the falling water and filled it. Then he secured it back to his saddle and remounted. Looking at his hand, he found that his fingers were a little red from the icy water. He marveled at the water as it cascaded down the side of the mountain. He watched it and until it disappeared from view. They passed the occasional wagon or traveler as they progressed. It wasn't long until they heard a steady, loud roar from up ahead. The mountainside on their right abruptly fell away, revealing a tall, narrow gorge with a majestic, powerful, three-tiered waterfall. Three-tiered needs a hyphen. The water, after collecting in a pool at the base of the falls, crossed under a bridge and cascaded down the mountainside to the river below. The sound of the falls was deafening as they crossed the bridge that spanned its outflow. Its thundering reverberated through them as they paused a moment to marvel at the wonder of nature. Okay, that basically is that three-tiered waterfall I was telling you at the graded bridge deck. However, it doesn't roar. There is no roar there. I mean, you can kind of hear it falling a little bit, but for the most part, it's not intrusive. You don't feel it in here. Now, to do that, you got to go up Highway 2 through Stevens Pass. That's east of Seattle. You take Highway 2 out of Monroe, and you go up towards Leavenworth. Now on the way is Deception Falls. It's a rest area, potty. You pull off there, you hike down to it. Now this thing here, when the snow starts melting, this thing thunders. I mean, you can't talk, it's so loud. And there's this little bitty bridge that spans where the water going, and the water will crash over this bridge. So if you want to, but you got to cross the bridge to get up a little bit further, so you get under where the road goes near it. And if you stand in there at that time, man, you can't hear anything. It's just boom, boom, boom. It's just so loud. It's awesome. I love it. "Ain't that something?" James hollered, trying to be heard over the falls. "Yeah," he hollered back. While they paused on the bridge, the spray wafted over them, and it felt good, cooling them from the heat of the day. "James, look!" exclaimed Michael as he pointed to the pool at the base of the waterfall. 3 deer drank from the pool. They both... Okay, I need to change pool. See, one of the things that I really key in on is repetition. I really don't want to be repetitive. And I have pool in the previous sentence. See, Michael pointed to the pool at the base of the waterfall. 3 deer drank from the pool, repetitive. So change it to 3 deer drank from the water. That way, it's not so repetitive. Ever since I found that one paragraph when I originally started editing this book, where the word James was the first word in like 3-4 sentences in one chapter or one paragraph, every paragraph or every sentence in that paragraph started with James. And that just drove me crazy. Ever since then, I've been a manic about that. I don't always catch it. Sometimes I can't help it. There's no way I can avoid it, but I try not to. They both enjoy the sight of the deer, but it was time to move on. As they left, Michael turned his head several times to capture the beauty of the waterfall and the deer until the scene disappeared behind trees and rocks. The travelers they encountered were few and far between, all either on individual wagons or part of small caravans. None were very talkative, as they had far too much on their minds, worrying about conditions on the other side of the mountains and whether or not they would find safety. The further into the pass they went, further. I think I did further all the time back then. No, it's farther. The farther. Distance is farther. And the past they went, the more the road climbed away from the river. Though still able to hear the rapids as water crashed over rocks below, it had been steadily growing fainter and fainter as they progressed to the upper elevations. Upon reaching where the road widened into a scenic overlook, they stopped for a short break to give the horses a rest and to have a quick bite to eat. Michael moved to the edge of the overlook and gazed down to the river below. Having never looked down from such a height, he was almost overcome with a sudden fear of heights. Assailed by vertigo, he backed away quickly until there were several yards of road between him and the edge. "Are you okay?" James asked as he handed him a portion of the rations. Michael took the food James offered. "It's just that we are so high. I didn't realize we had climbed so far." "It is deceiving," James admitted. "While you're climbing, it doesn't seem like your ascent has been all that dramatic until you look down. Then it sort of hits you all at once. I remember it happened to me once when my family took me to Yellowstone." "Your family took you to see a Yellowstone?" asked Michael, confused. "Not a Yellowstone," corrected James, "but a place called Yellowstone. It's where people went to get away for a while and have fun." "Oh," Michael replied. After their break, they remounted and resumed scaling the pass. They came to a section. Okay, the pass. Pass is lowercase. I'm going to change that to uppercase because I think it's a name, not necessarily just a word. They came to a section of the mountain that leveled into a plateau. The plateau extended for several miles from the gorge until it ended and the mountains resumed their rise. About a quarter mile off the road, farther back on the plateau, sat a large structure in ill repair. It stood 4 stories high. 4 stories should be hyphenated. With windows only in the uppermost section of the walls. A large door loomed open, slightly ajar. "Must be an old keep," James guessed. "Maybe a garrison was once stationed there." I have here, so I'm changing it to there. "Could be," agreed Michael. "It doesn't look as if anyone had been in there for a long time. Wonder if it's haunted." "Don't tell me you believe in ghosts," James said, slightly amused. "Of course not," asserted Michael. "It's just that the place looks creepy." "I would love to see what is inside," admitted James, and then let out a big sigh. "But we better make the best time we can while we can. No telling how long we will have before we run the danger of encountering the Empire's armies once we get through the mountains." "Good idea," agreed Michael, slightly more enthusiastic than the occasion called for. "We better hurry along," he urged. Okay, there's no comma between along and the quotation mark, so I'm going to add that. When he kicked the flanks of his horse and continued down the road. With that, he kicked the flanks of his horse and continued down the road, putting distance between himself and the old keep. Grinning at his friend, James hurried to catch him. The plateau area with the abandoned keep was left behind. The rest of the afternoon passed with more waterfalls, though none were as spectacular as the 3-tiered one. About mid-afternoon, the sun fell behind the high mountain peaks to the west, and the air turned chilly. Over the next hour, the temperature dropped rapidly. Soon, they pulled on the new jackets they had bought in trade meet. Putting in had bought. I didn't have that before. I just had they bought. They had bought. They had bought. I'm going to put had in there. "I see what you mean," Michael said as he put on his jacket. "About what?" "About how cool it gets up here after the sun goes down. My grandfather taught me to always to be prepared. He used to say, 'It's better to bring a jacket you'll never need than to need one you left at home.' Wise man, your grandfather." "Yes, he was. But you know, when they are giving those little bits of wisdom, you seldom see the value of it at the time and often see it as being a big nuisance." James sat and thought for a while before he broke out in laughter. "What's so funny?" "I was just remembering when I came to realize the value of that particular gem," he said as he began to explain, but then paused for a moment. "And what happened?" Smiling at the memory, James said, "Well, it was summertime and we planned a trip out to the coast. San Francisco was the name of the city. Now, my grandfather was telling me that I should bring my jacket, that I may need it. But it was really hot where we were and I couldn't see the need of it. We arrived at the city and decided to go see Alcatraz. That's an old prison situated on an island in the middle of the bay. I got on the ferry that was going to take us over there and froze." Smiling, Michael enjoyed hearing about James's little goof up. "I told my grandfather that I was cold, but he just smiled and called it a lesson learned. We stayed on that island for what seemed like a long time, and I froze the entire time. I was miserable, my nose was running, and I was shaking. When we finally returned to the mainland, I made a beeline for a cellar of hot clam chowder and grabbed me some. I'll never forget that experience, and I will never be caught again without a coat, not if I can help it." Finished with the story, James rode along in silence for a while, reminiscing about home. True story. That's exactly what happened to me, and ever since then, my kids will tell you, I always bring a jacket. it could be summertime. If I'm going out to eat at a restaurant, I got my hoodie. It may not be on, but I got it with me, wrapped around my waist, or at least in the car, because yeah, I don't like being cold if I don't have to. But no, that's a true story. That's exactly what happened to me. And now my kids are used to me saying, remember, it's better to need and not, or it's better to have and not need than to need and not have. And since I drive a van, or I did up until recently, we always had room. So you may not use it, but why not bring it? Shortly, he noticed the smell of wood smoke. He looked for a plume that might indicate a forest fire, but didn't see anything. The smell steadily increased as they continued. When he realized that they must be approaching the top of the summit, the smell increased as they continued. When he realized that they must be approaching the top of the summit. No, that just sounds right. No, I gotta change that. I just didn't flow well. The smell steadily increased as they continued. Period. And then change that to capital H. Okay, the smell steadily increased as they continued. He realized that they must be approaching the top of the summit. He had been smelling smoke. The smoke being. Oh, yeah, see, I got three sentences in that where it starts with he. I can't have that. All right. So we'll do this here. He realized that they must be approaching the top of the summit. The smoke being from many campfires. Ooh, that sounds better. Crossing the top of the pass, they came to the way stop. They were surprised at how many people were camped there. A contingent of soldiers was also there, keeping order. One of the soldiers broke off from his fellows and approached, holding up his hand to have them stop. Sorry, but the way spot is bursting to capacity with more coming in all the time, he explained. You two will need to camp a little further back down the road. A little further back down the road. Why? James asked. What's going on? Refugees from the fall of Saga, the soldier explained, indicating the people all the way at the way stop. They've been pouring through the pass for the last day or so. We made a temporary camp here for them, and we'll keep them here until we know what is to be done with them. Why not allow them to go on to trade meet? Michael asked. Those are the captain's orders, and he didn't explain himself to me, the soldier replied. No problem, James told him. We can camp a little farther back, distance is farther, down the road tonight, and then continue over in the morning. Sorry, he said, but we just got orders that no one's allowed down the east side of the pass until further notice. What? James exclaimed. Why? The soldier, tired of explaining, said, like I said, that's the captain's orders, and he doesn't explain them to me. Having said all he intended to, he turned around and headed back to the camp. Now what are we going to do, Michael asked. James gave Michael an exasperated look. Would you stop asking me that? All right, he explained. All right. I'm changing all my all rights from A-L-R-I-G-H-T to A-L-L space R-I-G-H-T. Make it 2 words. All right, he explained. He replied. I've been reading up on that, and apparently it's better. It's more accepted to do it that way. I don't think it really makes any difference, but if it bothers some people and I can change it, and the change won't bother anybody else, but it will make a few more people happy, why not change it? So, yeah, I'm just going to change it. Let's go back down a ways and find a campsite. Maybe we can think of something. They found a widening of the road with sufficient room to make camp and not be on the road. James sent Michael to gather firewood before it got dark while he staked out the horses and got them ready for the night. Michael made 3 scavenging trips before he collected a sufficient store of firewood to last throughout the night. James got the fire going and had dinner started before the light completely faded. While sitting around the fire eating... While sitting around the fire eating dinner, I don't need to have that because I just said and had dinner started. So I can just say, well, while sitting around the fire eating, 2 men appeared from the direction of the way stop and approached the campfire. Hello, one said. Good evening, gentlemen, James replied, and then walked and waited to see what they would do. They approached a little closer to the fire. James saw that they were eyeing their food hungrily. He said to them, would you two care to share our fire this evening? We have enough. Yes, we'd like that, the other man said, but we actually came to see if you could spare some for our families. You see, we fled Saragon when it fell with nothing but the clothes on our backs. Certainly, James said, if you don't have too many. The taller of the two men almost broke down and cried while the other said, thank you very much. Turning to the taller man, he said, Silas, go and bring him over. Silas headed back to the refugee camp. The man said, my name is Bellin. I was a farmer before the Empire's army sacked our city. How did you get out? When the Empire overran the walls, it was total chaos, Bellin explained. People fled in every direction trying to get out. My grandfather used to be a smuggler way back when he was a younger man, and once showed me an old route into the city that he said no one, not even the governor, knew about. Silas and I found it and used it to get our families out past the walls. The tunnel ended in a pile of old stone a dozen yards from the river, almost 2 miles north of the city. We were past the enemy lines and ran all night and all day, hiding whenever we heard someone approaching. We did that until we saw Matic soldiers coming from the City of Light. We waved them down and told them where we were from and what had happened. They told us to head here, saying we could find refuge and safety. Remarkable story, James said. About that time, Silas returned with the rest, 2 women, an older boy, and 2 smaller children. All had the lost look of those who had their lives torn asunder. James stood when the ladies approached. Welcome. You are welcome to stay here the night if you wish. We don't have a lot of food, but what we do have, we will gladly share. Turning to Michael, he said, get the rest out of the bags and pass it out. They look as if they could use it. The 2 families situated themselves on the ground around the campfire and waited for Michael to distribute the food. There was enough to go around, not enough to stuff their bellies, but sufficient to still their hunger. By the way, my name is James, and this is my companion, Michael. We sure thank you for this, James, Saga said. The kids were getting hungry, and the food that the soldiers distributed ran out by the time we made it to the front of the line. I don't think they had planned on this many making it here, Bellin said. They said a caravan was on its way from trade meet, but wouldn't be here until tomorrow or possibly the day after. We passed a large caravan coming this way earlier in the morning. It will most likely be up here sometime late tomorrow. That's good news, James said. James and I plan on going on through the pass to Matic in the morning, Michael told him. James gave him a look that said, don't tell strangers our business. Michael had the good sense to blush at his mistake. Silas's wife said, you mustn't go there. Holding his wife's hand, Silas said, I agree. It's not a good place to be right now. Well, we don't plan on going anywhere near Saragon, James said. Still, the Empire's men are terrible foes, Bellin stated. Why are they so terrible? Michael asked with apprehension. Bellin looked at him and said, they kill just for the pleasure of it. If they can capture you, you become their slave, and they take you back to their empire to sell you at auction. When Saragon fell and we were running through the streets to get to the smuggler's route, we saw the slavers taking people, tying their hands behind their backs, and stringing them in the slave lines. If they were too old or invalid, they just slit their throats, leaving them to lie in the street and bleed to death. Bellin's wife put a hand on his arm, shook her head, and indicated the children. Oh, sorry. Maybe this is not the time or place to be talking about such things. I think I get the idea, James said, understanding. But there's not much we can do. We have to go. If you must go, Silas said, then stay as far to the north, away from Saragon, as you can. No one was sure if the Empire would stop at Saragon or push further north. Farther north. Pushing farther north. We will, I promise, he assured them. He turned his attention to the vacant-eyed younger children. Now, who would like to hear a silly song about a bunny? They perked up at that. At least the younger 2 did. One of them said very timidly, I do. So James began singing, Little bunny foo-foo, hopping through the forest. That was one of my kids' favorite songs. And I've done that before. Oh, there was this one time I was driving by myself back before I had kids. I was heading to meet my brother and his wife at Disneyland. I'm almost positive that was, and I was heading into LA. Well, ahead of me there was this car, and the back was glass, like the old station wagons used to be, and there were 2 boys sitting there facing out the window. Of course, you probably couldn't get away with that now. And they had the look of zombies. They were just like, bored. And I'm sure from their parents' point of view, that was ideal. They were quiet and everything else, right? So, I followed them for a few miles, and these boys, and I was right behind them, pacing them. And these boys they just looked so bored. And so I went, and the younger one kind of, perked up at that. And he nudged his brother. And I did it again. And then the younger one stuck his tongue out at me. And I started making funny faces at him. And I got those two boys so worked up. They were laughing. They were bouncing in their seats. And yeah, I'm sure their parents cursed me for that. But that was just fun. And why not make them happy? Because it's just really boring sometimes as a kid riding with your parents. I know I couldn't wait for it to be over when I was small. So yeah, that's yeah. I do stuff like that. I've done that more than once. I'm sure many parents didn't know who to blame for their nice, peaceful, calm drive to be suddenly ended. For the remainder of the evening, he sang all the old silly songs he once sung as a child, and even threw in a couple of poems. The children sat in rapt attention, and after the first two songs began to smile a little, and even clapped along. The adults, seeing life return to their children, clapped along as well with tears in their eyes. Eventually, James's voice cracked, and he had to stop for a while. Michael, surprisingly, began a song about a lord who couldn't find his slippers. It was a silly song, but one of the children had heard before because they sang along with him after the first chorus. The rest of the night was full of singing and silly tales. For a time at least, the memories of what happened and what the future might hold were forgotten. All that mattered this night was that they had brought joy back to the children. And I think that's important. Maybe I'm just odd that way. But why not make children's lives happier if you can? You make a child happier while they grow up, and then when they grow up, they may want to make other people happier. It'll spread like a vicious disease, right? Become a pandemic of people trying to make people happier, and how can that be a bad thing? The following morning, when the sky began to lighten, even before the sun rose over the mountain peaks, James and Michael made ready to get through the pass. Silas, Belen, and the families gathered around, shaking hands. Silas's wife even went so far as to give James a kiss. "Thank you so much for last night," she said with tears in her eyes. "I wish you all well," James said as he mounted his horse, with Michael following suit. James reached into his shirt and pulled out a bag of coins, tossing it toward Silas, who caught it. "Take this and start a new life." "We can't accept this," Silas said, and made to hand it back. "No, you keep it," James said, refusing to take it. "I have plenty of money. What good is it if you can't use it to help out your fellow man? How can I ever repay your generosity?" "Before this year is out, help 2 people who are less fortunate than you," James explained. "Also, ask them each to help 2 people within a year. Start a chain of giving. Who knows where it might lead?" When all this was ready, he and Michael mounted up. Now, when I did this, I remember that I had intended for that to come back to James at some point in the future. I don't think I ever did. I always meant to, and it still might happen. But I always meant that his chain of giving would reap benefits for him later on, because someone who was further down the chain from Silas and Belen found him in a situation and helped him because of that. That was always my intention. But I don't think I ever tugged on that particular plot seed. James reached down and shook hands with Belen and Silas. "Goodbye now and good luck. May the gods speed you on your way," Silas said, "and be careful," his wife added. With a final wave, James and Michael headed toward the summit and into Matic. Behind them, James heard one of the little girls begin to sing "Little Bunny Foo Foo." With a tear beginning to well in his eye, he hurried along toward the way stop. They didn't get far before they were once again challenged by a soldier, a different one than the day before. "Travelers are not allowed beyond the way stop." "We can take care of ourselves," James assured him. "Be that as it may, my orders are clear. No one, and I mean no one, is to be allowed to endanger themselves by traveling into the Matic area." He stood and barred their way, staring at them. "What if we just ride around you and go anyway? Then the soldiers further east will stop you." Farther east. "The soldiers farther east will stop you." Further east, farther east? That one's still tough on me. "If you persist, they will arrest you and place you in jail for your own safety until you realize that it's not safe for you to go there." Damn, James muttered under his breath. Turning his horse around. All right, I need a new paragraph. Damn, James muttered under his breath. The new paragraph. Turning his horse around, he headed back towards the west. Oh, towards. When I first wrote this, toward, forward, backward, all had S's. Towards, backwards, forwards, which technically isn't wrong. I mean, it technically is correct, but it drove my mom crazy. And she's one of my editors. She reads everything I do. I mean, and back then she didn't do a very good job, but now she does. Now she catches a lot more than she does because I have her read it through first, and then I have her read it through a second time. If you do that, then you're more likely to catch something the second time because you're not concentrating on the story so much. But yeah, and she kept getting on me, so I just did a mass change. Towards, replaced with toward. Backwards, replaced with backwards, until finally they're gone, or they should be. I don't think they crop up, but if you ever find one, let me know. Okay. Turning his horse around, he headed back towards the west. As they returned, they found that Silas and Belen had already returned to the refugee area with their families. See, as they returned, they found that Silas and Belen had already returned. See, returned. Technically, it's accurate, but is it the best possible? As they returned, they found that Silas had already returned. I'm going to say gone back. Had already gone back to that way, people don't have to have repetitiveness. And I think that's important. To the refugee area with their families. There we go. Much better. James glanced at Michael, who was looking at him with a questioning look on his face. Don't ask me, he said. I wasn't, Michael replied innocently. I am simply waiting patiently to find out what we are going to do now. Smiling, he looked at James. I don't know. I certainly don't want to waste the time backtracking all the way to Trademeet and then go north through the Dragon's Pass. That will add days to our travel time. What do you plan to... Why don't you use that compass thing of yours, suggested Michael. It might just be time to do that, James agreed. Good idea. Michael beamed at the praise. They returned to the spot where they spent the night, then dismounted, and James removed the compass from his backpack. He sat as far from the road as he could, with his back to the rock wall. Motioning Michael over, he said, This may take a while, so make sure I am not disturbed. And remember, we don't want anyone to find out I can do magic, all right? Okay. All right needs to be changed from A-L-R-I-G-H-T to 2 words. All right. Oh, do it again. I suppose I could just do a mass, but yeah. Agreed, Michael, as he took his position a little closer to the road. James settled down and held the compass in his hands on his lap, beginning to tap into the magic. He concentrated on finding a way through the mountains that he and Michael would be able to travel, one which will avoid the soldiers who patrolled the road. He concentrated harder and harder and then felt the magic surge forth when he released it. To James, it felt as if the magic was expanding from him in a spherical radius, causing ever-increasing amounts to be drawn from him while searching every nook and cranny of the mountain for the elusive path. The spell continued to draw large amounts of power from him. After a short time, he started to feel the effects. His head throbbed and his breathing became more labored. Yet still the spell wasn't finished. He had not yet found a path through the mountains. Suddenly, the flow of power eased as the powers began to merge and flow in a more singular direction, like a pack of dogs that had caught the scent of a fox. Then all of a sudden, it was over, and the needle of the compass pointed westward back towards Trademeet. Opening his eyes, James saw where the compass pointed and sighed. Michael heard him and asked, "Did it work?" "Yes," James replied, "but it's pointing back the way we came." He showed the compass to Michael. "Is it directing us toward Dragon's Pass?" "I don't know, though we may have little choice." I need to do a new paragraph here. Getting up, he had a sudden dizzy spell and briefly lost his balance. Michael saw him falter and put James's arm around his shoulder. After a few steps and several deep breaths, he began to feel better. He then removed his arm from around Michael's neck. "I'm okay, it's passed." "Too big a spell again?" James nodded. "I think so, but I seem to be better able in handling the effects." He mounted his horse, and they turned to follow the direction indicated by the compass. Several hours later, and still following the compass, they arrived at the plateau where the old abandoned keep stood. When the keep came into view, the compass swung toward it. Great, James heard Michael exclaim when he realized where the compass pointed. Somehow I knew we'd be going in there. I had my suspicions too, James admitted, thinking the way may be further down the plateau, farther down the plateau. Thinking the way may be farther down the plateau and not at the old keep, James angled them to go around its left side. But when they passed the entrance, the compass turned and pointed toward the open front door. He showed the compass to Michael with a grin. Shrugging, he turned his horse toward the entrance and dismounted. James peered through the slight opening made by the door being ajar, but couldn't make out anything in the dim light. Turning back to Michael, he said, "Let's secure the horses around back and then investigate. We don't want anyone coming by and helping themselves while we are in there." They walked the horses around to the back, where they secured them. James took his backpack, and they returned to the entrance. He paused a moment, then asked Michael, "Want to go first?" "No," replied Michael, a little nervous. "All right, then." All right, changing it. "I'll go first." James stepped up and slowly made his way through the doorway. Passing into a poorly lit room, he made his glowing orb, and the light from it revealed a large room with several doors and 2 hallways that led from it. The compass indicated that they should take the hallway directly opposite the door. He walked to the hallway. As he entered, the light from the orb revealed something large lying across the floor not 3 feet from where they stood. He moved closer. As he moved closer, he discovered it was a dead body in the later stages of decomposition. The clothing on the man, at least he thought it was a man, was in pretty bad shape, but looked as if it had been of good quality. Michael saw the dead body illuminated by the orb and gasped. "James, we shouldn't be in here," he said with a tremor of fear in his voice. "Let's find another way." "Don't be scared," he said reassuringly. "It's only a dead body." He leaned down and grabbed the stick. He began to poke through the dead man's clothes. Most likely this was a merchant traveling through the past that ran afoul of bandits, and they dumped his body in here. See? Look, there is no purse on him, nothing at all of value. James used the stick and turned the head. "And look," he said, indicating the back of the head. "It's cracked like someone hit him in the head with something hard." "Maybe the bandits are still here," Michael said wearily, looking around. "Not likely," he replied. "If they were still using this place, they would hardly have left a dead body rotting in the hallway. They would have dumped it out back where they wouldn't have had to walk over it and smell it." "I suppose you're right," admitted Michael, though still not very reassured. "So relax, we're going to be okay." "If you say so," Michael replied half-heartedly. Leaving the body behind, they continued down the hallway, passing 2 doors before coming to a halt before the third. "Why are you stopping?" "It's indicating that we need to go through this door," he explained. He tried the handle but found it locked. He handed the compass and glowing orb to Michael before throwing his weight against the door. With a crash, the door burst in, breaking off a 2-foot section of the door jamb. 2 foot hyphenated. Door jamb. In the process, his momentum carried him a little ways through the door where he stumbled and fell. He rolled down a flight of stairs and came to rest at the bottom. Bruised and scraped but otherwise unhurt, he got to his feet. At the top of the steps, he saw Michael illuminated by the glow from the orb looking down at him. "Are you okay?" the boy asked. "Yeah," James replied. "Come on down. But be careful. I might have broken a few of the steps during my fall." Being extra careful, Michael took it 1 step at a time, skipping over a few broken ones. He finally made it to the bottom. It was a small room, only about 10 feet by maybe 12. The only exit was a door at the top of the stairs. The room itself was empty except for the dust that had accumulated over time. James retrieved the compass from Michael, and sure enough, it was still pointing the way. This time, it indicated the direction they needed to go was through the wall. Pointing to the wall indicated by the compass, he said, "It says we're to go that way." "Another secret door like in Lord Coleridge's estate?" Nodding his head, James replied, "I think so. Give me the orb for a second." Holding out his hand, Michael passed him the orb. He did a thorough inspection of the wall and failed to find anything that looked like it could be a trigger to open the secret door. He then moved to the adjoining walls, searching for some trigger or other mechanism that could possibly open a secret door. Okay. Spacing is what's wrong with this one. Michael looked around and noticed a design on the floor, partially hidden by the accumulated dust. "James, look at this." James knelt to take a closer look. Brushing away the dust, he discovered a square-shaped stone engraved with a design of a circle within a circle within a circle. He applied pressure to it, but nothing happened. Getting to his feet, he had Michael step on it while he pushed on the wall, but nothing happened. "Maybe there are others we need to release first," he theorized. look around for any more similar designs. Michael discovered a second one on the wall about midway up the stairs. This one was a single circle. Excited, James said, if there is one with 3 circles and another with just 1, then there may be another with 2. And hopefully by pressing them in the correct order, it'll enable us to open the secret door. Makes sense, agreed Michael. They looked, but failed to find 2 circles, one in the other. I don't think there is one here, Michael said after they had searched for a while. There has to be, he insisted. It wouldn't make any sense otherwise. He got on his hands and knees to closely examine the floor inch by inch. But we've examined all the walls and floor over and over, Michael went on. There is no such design here. Standing up suddenly, James looked at Michael. You're right. We have searched all the walls and the floor, but we haven't looked at the ceiling. He turned his gaze upward, and sure enough, there was a design with 2 circles, one inside the other. I knew it, he exclaimed excitedly. Michael, go and press firmly on the single circle. Michael cautiously made his way up the stairs and pressed the circle. Now what? Toss the piece of door jamb that I broke off down to me. Michael found the broken door jamb and tossed it down to James. Catching it, James raised it up toward the double circle in the ceiling. Holding it steady, he put the end against the design and pressed firmly. Michael, by this time, had made it back down the stairs. James lowered the broken door jamb and let it drop to the floor. He walked to the triple circle on the floor and pressed on it with his foot. Suddenly, a section of the wall began to swing inward, creating a 3-foot wide by 5-foot tall opening. I'm pretty sure it should be 3 feet and 5 feet, but 3 foot and 5 foot just sounds good to me. And I guess that's just gonna I'll have to rack it up to my own personal flair, I guess. He brought the orb close and discovered the open door revealed a narrow passage which looked to have been carved out of the mountains. As James looked down the passage, the door began to close. Finding no way to keep it open, he backed out. He turned back to Michael. Let's go back up and get our things from the horses. You mean we're leaving them up there? Michael asked incredulously. Our way lies through there, James said, pointing toward the secret door, and I seriously doubt if the horses will be able to make it. Besides, can you think of a way to get them safely down that broken flight of steps? No, I can't, Michael admitted as he glanced to the steps in question. Okay then, so let's go and get what we are really going to need and hide the rest, just in case we manage to come back this way again. He carefully climbed back up the stairs, trying to place his weight evenly so as not to cause another step to break. Michael waited until he had made it to the top before following. They walked back through the hallway, past the corpse, and to the front door. Around back, they found their horses and mules just where they had left them. James grabbed the jackets. They took everything off the horses and mules, tying them loosely so that if they didn't return, they would be able to break free. In several trips, they managed to haul all their equipment and tack down into the little room at the bottom of the stairs, secreting it under the steps. As they brought in the last load, James saw the supply caravan they had passed the day before trundling along the road on its way to the refugee camp. He stashed the last of the equipment under the steps and said, unless someone comes down here, our stuff should be safe. It's too bad we have to leave the horses. I know, but we have money to buy new ones and we're pressed for time. He took out his traveling scribe case and placed it on the stairs, opening it. You're not taking that with us, are you? No, James responded. I just want to take the notes I've written. He removed the note-filled parchment and rolled them tightly, placing them in his backpack. Closing the case, he placed it with the rest of the equipment under the steps. He turned to Michael and asked, Did you get the money? Michael patted one of the bags over his shoulder and said, Right here. Okay, looks like we're ready. Go push the circle by the stairs and we'll get going. Michael climbed up the stairs and pushed the circle on the wall. James used his makeshift stick and pushed the double circle on the ceiling. He then went and stepped on the triple circle on the floor. The secret door swung open and James took the lead. He held the glowing orb as he passed through the doorway and into the tunnel. And that ends chapter 21. So, that little scene was Dungeons & Dragons. I had created that for a campaign a long time ago. And so, I incorporated it. Some of these things in my books is from my own campaigns that I designed back when I was a teenager. Okay, so now they're going into the underground area, which I always love those, and you can just let your imagination run free when you do those. Now, in reality, would someone have devised a secret door opening in such a way? No, probably not. But it's a story, so make it fun. Anyway, that ends chapter 21. So if you liked it, like, subscribe. I could use all the help I can get. My channel's growing daily, but it's growing very slowly. I'm getting like one subscriber a day on average. I'd like to get more than that. I need 1,000. See, when on YouTube, if you get 1,000 subscribers, you can start earning ad revenue. I'm at 131, so I've got a ways to go. And at one person a day, that'll be about 3 years from now. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, I'm having a good time doing this, so I will continue when this book is done, Shepherd's Quest. Now, tomorrow, Sunday the 21st, I am going to the Scarborough Renaissance Fair in Waxahachie, Texas. And we're leaving at 6 a.m., which is usually what time I do these. So if there's not one tomorrow, that's why. I'm going to try to do one later this afternoon, but there's no guarantee I'm going to have time to do it. If I can do it, then I'll upload it before I go to bed tonight. So you'll have it tomorrow morning, chapter 22. Otherwise, you'll have to wait till Monday morning for chapter 22. Just to let you know, there might be a slight delay. My apologies. Anyway, have a good day. It's going to rain here, so I'll be inside doing stuff on getting the next book done. Still don't have a title for it. Man, those titles, they just drive me crazy. See, Trail of the Dark Mage. The first one is Light in the Barren Lands. The second one is Tides of Faith. Third one is Dark Shores of Salvation. See, all three of those have a religious theme to them. Light in the Barren Lands, faith, Tides of Faith, Dark Shores of Salvation. So I want to continue that theme, I guess you could say, for the next one. I have a title in my head that I've been using, but I can't use that. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. I will mention it probably in an afterword of the book when it comes out, but I'm not going to mention it now. It gives too much away. But I have a title, but I can't use that title unless I absolutely have to. Yeah. Well, y'all have a good day. And thanks for watching the whole thing. Appreciate it.